Hi, my name's Erwin, and this is the Poetry Lighthouse podcast. In today's episode, I had the pleasure to interview poet and writer Ben Wilson, who will talk about his new poetry collection, Life, Love, Other. Now for the second poem, which is called A Train. I find it also very beautifully written. It's amazing. And I wonder, what inspired you to write this poem?
Yeah, Train is, I think, one of the most powerful poems in the book. It's one of the poems I'm proudest of. And there is a real kind of backstory to it that ties into what we talked about earlier in a number of ways. So just to set the scene, we're in January and February. I'm with someone I love very much, who I know loves me very much. But as happens in life, we want different things longer term. We're gradually facing up to the fact that it probably isn't going to last. And at this point, there's no poetry book. There's like, I'm just going about my day job, and I'm on a train to London to see a video game. I mentioned earlier doing stuff for WWE, the wrestling company, and I'm on the way to see this game, WWE 2K23. And when I got into London to Paddington, I didn't want any baggage with me because I wanted to run from Paddington to the office in Soho and then back to Paddington. So all I took with me was like a tiny little journalist notebook and my phone and my headphones. And of course, I get on the train and I'm like, what am I going to do for an hour and a half? I have no idea. And one of the things I did, I'll talk about in the next poem, Little Things. But the other thing I did was I'm looking out the window and sort of admiring the English countryside, the beauty of it. And I get this little notebook out and I just started writing down what I can see in like rhyming couplets. And so I write down very quickly, flourishing fields, I long to roam, historic spires and country homes. And just in that instant, I've got like the beat for a poem. I know I want to write something in rhyming couplets. And I very quickly start adding to it, tweaking it slightly. And in like maybe 5-7 minutes, I've got this poem. But I know it's funny how this works, isn't it, with poetry, where sometimes you'll write in iambic pentameter, sometimes you might write a sonnet, sometimes you might write a haiku. With this, I immediately knew I wanted it to be 12 lines long, have this familiar beat to it, almost like being on a train, and rhyming at the end of every second line. But I couldn't finish this poem, and I sat there just staring at this bit of paper. And often, like also this notebook, often the stuff will flood out as it did then. But like the first 2 lines and the last 2 lines are so key, and I couldn't finish it. And I'm sort of staring out the window, and suddenly, even though I'm at a bittersweet time in this relationship, suddenly all the happy memories just flood my brain. I'm taken back to meeting this person for the first time and all the great things we've done in the last, few months. And the final line in an instant comes to me, or the final 2 lines, which is the lone constant beyond this view, the distant sun, the one, the you. And it just hit me. I wrote it down. I sent it to people like straight away. I was like, sometimes when you're writing something, generally, I'm a big critic of my own writing, but sometimes you'll write a line or two where you go, I can't believe I wrote that. I don't know where it's come from. I don't know why it's hit me like that. But that's one of the 2 lines I'm most proud of in the book. And where it's been a really important poem is that relationship actually ended the following Saturday. We lasted 4 more days. And in a sign of, in a little poignant, sad moment, I was going to read it to her on Valentine's Day and we didn't make it that far. And so when you read it back, it's like, okay, that person didn't turn out to be the one. And there's some sadness to that. But actually, that thing I talked about earlier about being relatable, I think anyone can relate to that feeling where you're walking around a supermarket or you're driving on a car journey or you're hanging out with your kids, maybe, or your family, and you're doing something completely irrelevant to your partner. But then suddenly your brain is just flooded with these happy romantic images of, you doing the things you love to do together. And that's where even that relationship ending, that poem took on a much bigger power in terms of, I knew when 6 weeks later I started working on the book at Sarah May's house, I knew it had to be the last poem in the book. And I knew it had to be, those lines had to be the last 2 lines, because I will always be like that romantic I talked about. And so I guess in this scenario, like going back to January and February, I knew that relationship was on its way out, but I wanted to stand tall till the end. I wanted this person to know that I was devoted to them to the end. You know, whatever may be, what que sera, sera, whatever may be will be. And I'm really proud of it as a poem. And, you know, I think I talked about earlier, like having this back and forth about which ones to leave in and which ones to take out. I knew that poem had to stay in. And I guess the one is that it's, even if it's not the person it was necessarily written about at the time, it becomes that metaphor for what I think we're all searching for, kind of that thing you can, you know, you can be staring out the window on a train, and then just like you beyond that somewhere is that hypothetical person that you're going to spend the rest of your life with. So I'm really proud of it, even though that love story didn't have the Hollywood ending.
Yeah, thank you so much for that explanation. It was wonderful because I think a lot of people can relate to this kind of experiences, and I think it's one of the most powerful kind of love feelings that one can feel when one starts to, you know, fall in love with someone. And I think the same way it is so beautifully written, it represents how beautiful this feeling might feel at that time. It feels like you're floating and you have all these images passing in the train. So before I start to pick on very specific things, could you please read the poem to us?
Of course, this is the last poem in the book. This is Train. Flourishing fields I long to roam, historic spires and country homes, fresh water sprinting into spring, perched blackbirds nursing broken wings, as pylons sizzle, stutter, spark, over taupe trenches, Spartan, stark. A troop of slumber-laden sheep, and onward these carriages creep, no time to take in each pit stop, the towns, the roads, the farms, the crops, the lone constant beyond this view, the distant sun, the one, the you.
Thank you for such a wonderful reading. I am so enthralled by these gorgeous images and landscapes that you just read right now, which seemed to me as if you were passing, you know, you were sitting in a train and you can really, really see these images just passing by, which is so beautiful. And I particularly liked the line that says, no time to take in each pit stop. And I think this is what we may often feel, that, you know, we don't sit to look at one thing at a time and take it in. We don't have the time to take it in. It's just, you know, passing on, and we cannot avoid it. It's just something that happens. And that talks a lot about, you know, the beauty of nature and the beauty that we find in other people that we tend to fall in love with. So making that connection.
Yes.
And I think that's really nice to have this kind of roaming mind in which you are in your day doing your own stuff, and suddenly these kind of memories or kind of images of this person that we like just pop in randomly. And I think that really represents how all these you know, the beginning of relationships, when we've got all these things happening, and I think these last two lines really make that make this poem a whole package of these
Yeah.
kind of let's call them love elements that
Yes.
that we all want to have at what time in our lives. And I
Yeah,
think it was
I think
very
when I said
beautiful.
earlier about, I really like that even in poetry, it's very true if the features are right, but even in poetry, I always like to surprise the reader. I think with your first and last line in particular, if you can subvert something, or if you can take someone on a journey where they think they're going to get one thing, they get something else towards the end, I think it's a really difficult skill. And it's not something I try throughout the book, because I think you could easily overdo that. But I knew one of the things I loved about this poem once it was written was, my intention, as I said about it, was just to write a poem, a nature poem about what I could see from the train. And it is, for the first 9 or 10 lines. There's a couple of metaphors in there, like you say, about, you know, life hurtling by too fast for us to keep up. But I surprised myself by turning it into the end into a love poem. And then the entire poem reads differently second time around once you've read that. And that's why I knew it had to come last. It had to be that, you know, it's one of those things where when you decide on the format of your book, you realize, especially in the modern day of like people going through a Kindle, they might not make it that far. And there's that temptation to go, oh, this is one of the best poems. Maybe it should be in the start. And I was like, no, you have to have that. Like the last track on an album, you want to leave someone with a kind of a big, you know, a lump in their throat or in their heart, something that stays with them. And I knew as soon as I wrote that, well, I obviously wasn't playing the book at the time. As soon as I started planning the book, I knew that had to be the last poem in it because of those two lines.
Well, for me, it was a big surprise, these two lines definitely for the entire poem, because when I started reading it, it was all about nature. And I said, wow, this is so wonderful. Like, I can literally see how I can feel as though I were in the train on the train. And then the last two lines kind of surprised me as, wow, it's actually about someone else. So the second time I read it, it was a complete different experience. And I think that's amazing that you are able to do this kind of to surprise the reader in this way, because it's very difficult to achieve that in poetry. So that's a very clever way to write a poem, very well and eloquent. So that's amazing. And also, I think the rhymes that you used were they flow so well that it just seems like, you're floating whenever you're reading the poem, you're just floating on the words, and it just passes from one line to the next really well and effortlessly. So these are full rhymes, which I really appreciate. A lot of times, poets tend to have these full rhymes that sometimes they just put them out there just for the sake of having a rhyme,
Yes,
and they don't really make lots of sense when we read it, or they seem a bit to push it a bit, just in order to have a rhyme. But this
yes,
actually seems to flow so well. The rhymes and the words are actually so powerful, and each and every single one of them have their own space in the line, in each line. So I really appreciate that about the poem.
thank you. Yeah, I really wanted that rhythm there of you almost that sense of you sitting on a train, and yeah, each line having that natural ending to it, moving on to the next one. So you've got that rhythm that carries not only in the line but throughout the 12 lines. And I don't know why I chose a specific number of 12 lines, but yeah, I was really proud of how that turned out. And sometimes that's what happens is in poetry, you kind of like, I don't know how to phrase this, kind of like you're taken over by an invisible force where it just flows out before you can
Mhm.
think about it. And it doesn't happen often, but when it does happen, it's like a magical feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great feeling that I wish I could have more often than I than I
Yeah,
have it.
yeah,
But it's wonderful. I can definitely feel how it flows, and it, as you say, it really it seems as though you were sitting on the train, and it's the pacing that it's really constant. Like the train, it doesn't go fast and slow. It just keeps the same
exactly.
speed, and that's
Yeah,
the same throughout the poem. You keep the same speed when you read it. So I think that's perfectly well executed. So congratulations on that.
thank you.
Um, and now moving on to the last poem, which is called Little Things. Um,
Yes.
well, could you just this time I would like you to read it first and then
Okay.
explain the poem. So please delight us with your poem.
I shall do. Okay. This is called Little Things. Is this why it always crumbles? I'm not one for surprise trips to sunshine climes, banknote flourishes, or credit card chimes, planting love bombs beneath burning bridges, or photos juxtaposed to prove our compatibility on social media. Am I doing it wrong? I hope not. For me, it's the little things. A soft kiss before I pour you a drink, a warm hug when you've had a bad day, train journeys learning your best mate's best song so I can serenade you both with a voice note, substance over style, hoping that's enough for a while. Walks by the weir, arcade games on the pier, cuddles and whispers in the garden in the dark, spoon-shaped mornings setting fire to our spark. Moments that can't be captured for Facebook or Insta as they last 1 second, but also last one eternity. Shopping for pajamas in Tesco at midnight, laughing our way around the deserted aisles because you love me and I love you. And even one night apart feels like a lifetime, or did once. Because now every night is apart for a lifetime, and it's just me wandering the nightwear section despite owning all the fucking pajamas a grown man could ever need. One pair. Am I doing it wrong? I hope not. For me, it's the little things.
Wow, thank you so much. I really enjoyed that reading, and this poem is so wonderful. I think it's Wow, it's such a great poem. I enjoyed every single line. I think it has so much imagery, and it's just so enjoyable to listen to and to read it. It has so many great images of like a story, and you can really see these little things. And I think that's the point of this poem, to appreciate these little things that may not seem important, may seem very, common, or very let's say monotonous, or but these little things are the ones that provides us with some sort of happiness, or maybe an experience that it's quite fulfilling. And
Yeah,
I think that is amazing about this poem. So could you tell us a bit more about how you got inspired to write it, and what do you want readers to get from it as a
question.
takeaway?
Good question. So the inspiration behind it, I had written, like I said, had about 30 poems ready for the book. And I'd written Keep Going, as you know, was one of the later ones. And I also wanted to write something that was like signing off, I guess, that last relationship in a way that was personal, but also a way that puts together my last 4 years of, like, the experience of dating since my marriage ending. And there's a big thing these days around love languages. I don't know if you've heard that term. And I have dated people. Obviously, a lot of this poem is based around that last relationship, inevitably, because of what I was going through at the time I wrote it. But in the bigger picture, the things I've learned about the last 3 or 4 years is it's really healthy to date different people, and everyone is looking for different stuff. And some people I've dated are looking for that traditional 1960s thing of they want you to whisk them away on like holidays and lavish them with chocolates and stuff. And partly because I'm a single parent, I can't really do that. And I also think that if you start off with big grand gestures at the beginning, it's really hard to sustain that, and you want more equality between two people. And then I'm just trying to read. I'm going to read back to the opening few lines, and yeah, and then that you also have these situations where you meet with someone and they want to plaster you and they're all over social media straight away. It's like, hang on, let's get to know each other before we're updating ourselves to like we're in a relationship on Facebook. Let's actually check we're both happy before we show the rest of the world we're happy. Or you pretend to the rest of the world. And so I started thinking about what my love languages were and what I stand for. And it is those little things, it's like whoever I'm with, it's always been about the gentlemanly thing of like having my partner walk through the door, or when I go to hers, and if she's had a rubbish day, letting them lean on my shoulder, both physically and emotionally, and offload on me and pour them a drink and give them the intimacy of a kiss or a cuddle. And so I'm thinking about this, but then I need a hook. I'm like, how do I turn this into a poem? And ironically, I thought back to that train journey. So, and it's weird how this one train journey, see this video game, had such a profound effect on the book. And even me doing this interview, because two of the poems kind of stem from that train journey. And so the other thing I did on that day on the train was my girlfriend then was staying at her best friend's house. And her best friend was really into this English singer called Ollie Murs. And again, we're kind of at this, we're on the cliff edge in the relationship. We don't know how long it's going to last, but I want to stay committed to the last. And if I'm on a train to London, I've got nothing to do, I will do something romantic for my girlfriend. And that would always be the case, past, present, and future. And so I'm thinking, what can I do that involves just my headphones and my phone? And I play a bit of guitar, and I'm like, hang on, there's that Ollie Murs song, Dance With Me Tonight, that sounds just like a song by Meghan Trainor called Dear Future Husband. I was like, right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to learn the chords to these two songs in my head. I'm going to look them up online, learn them. And tonight when I get in, I'm going to splice these two songs together. I'm going to sing a little bit of the Ollie Murs song. I'm going to sing a little bit of the Meghan Trainor song. And I'm going to throw in some funny lyrics aimed at my girlfriend and her best friend, and I hopefully they'll love it. And they did. It was one of the most, even though that relationship didn't last much longer, I look back, it was one of the most fun things I did, and I hopefully somewhere out there it still was something that a treasured memory for my ex. And so fast forward from that train journey to 2 months later where I'm like, right, I need one more poem for the book that is about like love languages, but I don't know what I can. I know I want to write about that sensation of I'm not the man to be getting his credit card out and like, buying you everything under the sun. And I'm not the man to be meeting you and straight away within a week putting you all over social media and telling you how I'm going to be with you for the rest of your life, because I don't think that's realistic. And I want to blend these two things together. I'm like, I came up with this line, train journeys, learning your best mate's best song to serenade you both with a voice note. And I was like, right, I've got that hook now. I've got the sort of center point of a poem. And from there, it's weird that, normally you start from the start and go chronologically. With this, I had that in the middle and I started writing either side of that. And I realized the bit at the start is about, okay, these are the things I don't stand for. These are the things, get them out of the way. Tell someone, if you go on a date with me or whatever, or we end up in a relationship, these are the things, these are my negatives, if you like. Don't expect this from me, but these are the things I will give you if you're with me. And so then you get into the soft kiss if you had a bad day, the spoon-shaped mornings, quite a erotic line, if you like, which is quite rare for the book, spoon-shaped mornings setting fire to our spark. And then it got to that point of going, right, I've done the first 2/3 of it, but this is going to be late in the book. I know it's the kind of like my farewell, my hopefully loving farewell to that relationship. And I wanted that. I mentioned that Taylor Swift song earlier, All Too Well. I kind of wanted the rest of the book, I tried to make relatable and not too specific or personal. With this, I wanted a kind of like something that stuck with me from that relationship that that felt poignant, but I would always carry forward as like a fond memory. And I thought of a time where we did end up we ended up going to the cinema somewhere. And we weren't supposed to be, but because of real life commitments and work and stuff, we weren't supposed to be spending the night together. And we ended up going, no, we have to spend this night together. We did get up going to a Tesco at like 11:45 and buying pajamas. It's sort of one of those things you only really do as a couple. But, it turned into this like one outstanding, lovely memory. And of course, then I wanted to get across the loveliness of that memory and then suddenly the starkness. And this is what we all go through when relationships end, right? You have this lovely memory and then your mind goes, oh, it's rubbish now because we can't do that anymore. And then the next time I was in the supermarket, I was like, I've got it now. This is what it reminds me of, that comparison between like the feeling you had when you were walking around the supermarket with this person just laughing in an empty supermarket to like that complete loneliness of being there alone and yearning for that person. And I was like, okay, those two things mesh really well together, but in a really sad way. And, sometimes poetry is just heartbreaking. Sometimes there doesn't have to be a kind of, here's the brilliant part. That part is just hard. But then I also wanted to throw a bit of humor in there to surprise the reader. So the pajamas thing and, one pair. And then I like a bit of repetition for emphasis. And so obviously early in the piece, there's that line of like, am I doing it wrong? I hope not. For me, it's the little things. And there it's like kind of the first use of it is like me, searching for myself. Am I doing it wrong? And then kind of the rest of the poem is exploring whether I am or not. And then like kind of at the end, using those lines again in the exact same words in a slightly different way, where it's emphasizing that even though I've gone through that experience of loving someone, walking through the supermarket, and I don't have that anymore, that I will still stand for those same love languages. And if that goes well in my next relationship, brilliant. If it doesn't go so well because of that, like I still want those to be the things that I stand for. And again, people seem to have reacted really well to it. What would I like the readers to get out of it? I think that sense that we're all individual, and that I think anytime you meet someone, any relationship probably requires a degree of working together, of compromise, if you like, but also the always be you. Like, if you meet someone and you feel you have to change as a person, I'd say this, well, me meeting other people, if at either end it feels like they're having to transform their characters to be with you, they're probably not the one. They're probably not the one from Train, and yeah, and hopefully it's like I said, the thing I love about I'm not trying to say I'm not trying to equate myself to Taylor Swift in any way at all. I have 0.0001% talent of Taylor Swift, but in terms of those stories she tells, where she'll tell you a story about her life and it's really personal, but it resonates with you. Little things, I guess, is my attempt to do that, and people seem to have responded really positively to it.
No, yeah, I think it's a really a beautiful piece that really sheds light on relationships and different types of loving. And I think that's really important to understand that we all love in different ways. And this is not like the type of Shakespearean, I will give you the world and I will, take you to see the whole everything. And,
Yeah,
this is a more realistic, but still very beautiful way of seeing relationships. And I think it's a very nice way to understand that we have different ways of loving. And I think so for you in this poem you have these little things that are your way of expressing your love, and I think these little things can have the same value or even more than
yes,
these big things that we often denote as something that is the proof of love, buying flowers and chocolates and these, and sometimes these little things are more valuable, and these experiences, because it's a point in time and space where you share these experiences, and it's special for both of you. And I think that's what's most important about their relationships.
yeah,
And this is so beautiful. I think
thank you.
this is my favorite. I have never found romantic poetry that I can resonate with so much as this one. And I
Thank you.
truly enjoyed reading this pieces of poetry, because well, they are fantastic. They are very relatable, and yeah, they're just pretty good.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much.
much for that.
Thank you.
Just as a last thing, I would like to, promote your book, because I really enjoyed it, and so I want to recommend it to everyone.
Thank you.
So your book is called Life, Love,
Life,
Other.
love, other. Yeah.
Exactly. So where can we find your book and how can we buy it?
So it is an Amazon exclusive, so you can buy it in paperback form or in Kindle form. And it normally costs £5.99 pounds for the paperback, and it normally costs £3.99 for Kindle. But I am so excited to be collaborating with you guys. I'm really appreciative of the support you've given me, and I'm really appreciative of you being able to me being able to have this talk to you. And I think hopefully at some point some of the poems are going to be on your website as well, which is a massive honor. And so to tie in with this podcast, I'm actually reducing the cost of the Kindle version to 99p. So it's less than £1. And because for me, it's not about the nothing to do with the making money element. It's about having those relatable words out there that hope, whether it's to do with relationships or whether it's to do with mental health or the other things, life and death, the other things in the book. I'd love people to read it and enjoy it. And so, yeah, for the foreseeable future, I'm going to reduce it to 99p as a thank you to the Poetry Lighthouse for collaborating with me. And so please, if you've enjoyed what you've heard, then do go and grab it from Amazon. And I'd love to know what you think.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing these wonderful poems with the world, and that's a great pleasure, and I'm so grateful for.
Oh, and can I flag up my Instagram quickly? Is that all right?
Yes, actually, yeah, I was going to ask you.
So
So yeah,
I've
please go
also
ahead.
just I've just launched. I have an Instagram account, Benji Wilson 79. But again, with so impressed by the work you guys are doing for the good of poetry, I've launched my own poetry specific Instagram now, which is Ben Wilson Poetry, all one word. And I'm going to be sharing a fair few poems from the current book. I've got 40 to 50 poems from the next book that I'm going to hopefully exclusively put on there. And yeah, be really, really intrigued to hear people's feedback. I'm hopefully collaborating with another poet at some point, who so that may well appear on there. Sort of we're in the early discussions of that. But yeah, just thanks to everyone for supporting, and thank you to you guys, Erwin, for backing me, because it's been a real honor.
Thank you so much. It is my absolute pleasure. And whenever you want, you are welcome to submit any of your poems to the Poetry Lighthouse. It would be such an honor to have your poems in our
Thank you so
website.
much.
And yeah, please, I'm gonna put all the links to your books and your Instagram account in the description box, so everyone
Thank you.
can find it very easily. And thank you so much, really, for this interview. It was a real pleasure. A great talk.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Poetry Lighthouse. If you liked this episode, don't forget to share and subscribe to our podcast. You can also visit our website thepoetrylighthouse.com, where you can read and submit your works of poetry and short stories. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram to keep updated. This is the end of the episode. Thanks again, and see you next time.